Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Safety. I'm your host, Dylan Sutherland from Protekta Safety Gear. Throughout this series, we'll be interviewing industry experts to provide our audience with valuable insights on various categories of PPE. Topics will range from selection and standards to maintenance and care. This should ultimately assist you in selecting fit-for-purpose safety solutions for your site. From these discussions, we will create resources such as Toolbox Talk downloads and blogs, all of which will be available on our website, www.protekta.co.za, for download. In today's session of Let's Talk Safety, we're going to jump into a bit more of a practical component of how do we apply the standards we're learning about, how do we make sure that we don't just buy the right product, but it's getting used. So today, joining me is Rene Joubert. Rene heads up our sales team, so she's the sales manager for Protekta Safety, and I'm hoping that she can give us some insight as to how do we take the certification component, making sure it's the right product, and apply a practical component, making sure that the people on the ground are actually using it and it is serving the purpose it's been certified to serve. So welcome, Rene. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. And you can chill. It's a nice conversation we're going to have.
Okay.
I think let's get into it, and let's start with, give us a bit of a background. What's your history in regards to safety?
So I started in the safety industry in 2017. I actually started in the warehouse. So that gave me a good background of how to... So I started in 2017 in the warehouse. It gave me a good experience, practical experience, to see what levels you go through until from getting the product to getting it on site. And then warehouse, internal sales, external sales, and then I ran the Asana branch, and now I'm with Protekta as the sales manager.
Fantastic. So that's quite a bit of experience. It's from different elements, dealing with different customers, different parts of the business you're serving, right?
Yeah, different industries. I actually learned most about the automotive because it was my first industry that I had to learn from nothing to something. So at a point, I didn't even know that we manufacture cars in South Africa. So it was a good learning curve.
Fantastic. I think let's jump into, are there ways that you've seen? Actually, let's start here. We can create a certified product. We can give somebody a certified product. Does that mean that they're using it appropriately on site?
Most of the time we don't see that. So normally when we go to site, for example, a dust mask, we'll see a guy wearing it on his head. And when you ask him, is it fine? It's so normal to him. So they think it's fine. And no one shows it out to them. So no, normally we see that people on site don't use the PPE they've been given as it's intended to use.
And do you think it's people's wanting to not be safe, or why do you think it ends up being like that?
I think it's an educational part. So normally in the beginning of the year, you'll do an induction into the role, but they don't do it for people starting in the middle of the year. You get a quick induction, follow the rules on site, but they don't tell you, okay, for a mask, you need to add the last head strap and then the top one. Make sure it fits. Push with both index fingers. So people just use their own initiative to wear what they see.
And how they think it's supposed to work.
Yes.
No, you've just mentioned, so you're explaining if we're going to wear a disposable mask, for instance. And I mean, that's a critical point. If you get taught on the first day of the year which strap to pull first and which strap next, just like before you do your K53 driving, when you know you're getting tested, your hands are at 10 and 2 and you're making sure you're driving properly. It's quite easy that as the year goes,
you forget.
And you don't take it as seriously, right?
Yeah, now you're driving with one hand. You're not looking into the mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think that's quite clear. Ultimately, when we're approaching safety, there is a big gap, and I think you've hit it spot on. Education is a big component of it. I mean, that's why we have these conversations. Hopefully, this conversation give somebody a bit of information they might not have had before, or in a different context, which they can apply practically. Let's try jump into some examples. Where do your team experience challenges? Because ultimately our goal as a business is keeping people safe. That's our ultimate goal. We don't want to supply something that doesn't keep someone safe, but it also doesn't help that we just supply it and then they don't use it properly and they're anyway not safe. Do you have any instances where your team are able to support more than just here's your certified product, but actually give a proper service?
100%. So normally when the team specs something on site, so they were using one glove that lasted a day, and they spec a new glove that lasts a week. They normally go do an introduction with the people on site that's using the gloves to tell them, okay, don't throw it away because it's habit. They'll tell them product specific knowledge about the items. So we actually go to site, we talk to that team, and we do it in different shifts. So if they have a morning and an afternoon shift, most of the time we're there the whole day and we accommodate both shifts.
And that would be training the person that's
using it,
actually physically using it.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And I would assume, I mean, there's multiple layers to this, that you can't just train the person that's on the ground, but the person that's responsible ultimately. So whether it's the safety officer, manager, possibly procurement, buying the right stuff, they would also be in that conversation.
So we try to. There is normally a gap that we see between procurement and safety, especially when it comes to what the product can give them, like longevity, quality. Procurement normally looks at the cost, and then safety would look at the features of the item. So we close the gap and get them all in that training session to relay the message. And we do it while the people is there, because normally they give real-time examples of their job.
And I would assume the challenges that they experience in that job.
They are quite. So what we see on site is, if we go on site and we meet with the people to try and understand what product is fit for that purpose, they are much calmer with us than with a safety officer or a procurement officer. So we try and be the middleman to relay the message between the two.
So do your teams have any other ability or tools that they can use to assist people in making good educated decisions on what they might need on their sites?
One of the extra tools we have, or that the team has access to, is something called the S-Wagon, short for safety wagon, where we go to site and we demo what happens to the body when it falls with different devices. So we do one with rope, a lanyard, and then a SRL, which is a self-retracting lifeline. And we show them how the forces on the body decreases with each technology type. So from the rope to the SRL, it significantly reduces the forces on the body. But we also take demo equipment with. So we'll show with hard hats. It's hard to show someone the properties of a hard hat, but doing a demo, like a job test of a tool, like a spanner falling onto a watermelon, what happens to the watermelon, and then we put a hard hat on and see how you can reduce that risk completely.
And what does that serve? Because that doesn't sell you anything. You're a salesperson. What does that serve for you?
Well, people who are educated make good decisions. So we want to make sure that the people we deal with daily, because we go to site many times in a month to the same sites and we see mostly the same people. We want to make sure they are safe, because we build relationships with them and it becomes close, and you want them to be safe while they doing something dangerous.
Awesome. So based on what the safety officers, safety managers, the person that's actually responsible for keeping the employee safe, do you think it's practical for them to have in-depth knowledge and detailed knowledge of every single component of PPE and what the standard is and what the features are and how it actually applies to their environment?
No, I don't think it's realistic, because when they do the studies as well, they understand the basics and what item category or category of item fits into the job. So for welding, they know they need to use an apron, a spat, and a welding boot and a garment. But they don't know that you get inherited fabrics. And for safety shoes, that the sole needs to go up to 300 degrees.
Okay, perfect. When we're talking about respiratory, so that's quite a it's always an interesting subject because respiratory is a silent killer. It's a slow killer. There were the instances where the mines have gone to court and 10 years later they get a legal case that's kind of finalized. But at that stage, people have lost their lives. Is there stuff that we, as Protekta, are able to share with and make sure that customers are actually able to protect their staff properly, other than just, here's a certified product, good luck?
I think it goes a lot deeper than just giving someone a product. We assess as an external sales team, we go out to site, we assess the environment, manage to get the right product on site, like a half mask with filters or pancake filters for an example. And then we do something called a respiratory fit test. It's where we test the leakage of the masks.
And when you're saying leakage, where could potential leakage of a mask be?
So what we see on site a lot of the times is people don't use the right fit of mask. They normally just say, here's a mask and go on with your work. But if you take a large mask on my face, at the bottom, it won't seal properly. So what's the use of wearing a mask even? We want to make sure that it seals at all, like, entry points.
Contact points.
Yes, contact points.
And when it's then, so let's say if the seal is broken, do you think the user knows that?
Well, what we've seen on site is a lot of them are aware that it's not working, because some of them put rags in the inside of the half-face masks to make a full seal. So it feels like a full seal to them, but they're defeating the whole purpose, right? Because fabric has pores. So what we try and explain to them is having the right fit. If we do the fit test and they taste the solutions, then they know it's not fitting properly.
Walk me through that. Explain to me, you're talking about the solutions and the fit test. What is that exactly?
So it's normally we put a mask. We start with not putting a mask on someone, and then we spray the solution into a hood type. It covers your head and your shoulders, and then at the front there's a hole where you can spray a bitter or a sweet solution. And then we measure the time that it takes for that solution to be tasted. Then we start the process again with a mask and filters. Obviously, the filters is according to the site's requirements of hazards. So if it's maybe like a chassis plant, they'll take a pancake filter with active carbon, so it takes out the fumes. So we'll test the person with that mask on. We'll spray the solution, and if they taste it immediately, you know the seal isn't there. And then we fit the mask, we give them the right size mask or a different size mask, and then we test it again, and then we test the breakthrough time. So normally after the first try, we get the right size and the fit right.
Okay, and them tasting it and indicating that they've tasted that would be the same as them being exposed to a hazardous substance in their work environment.
100%. So you can imagine if there is in their process something like ammonia that takes the oxygen out of the air. If they're exposed to something like that, you can't taste ammonia. So you would want to know, regardless of what's in the environment, that it has a complete seal.
And I think there's also validity to the fact that you've mentioned ammonia, which is then tasteless, and it could be even there's no smell, but there's also a reality that when you're in an environment for so long, you become numb to it almost.
Yeah.
And you don't actually feel the effects anymore on you.
We get it a lot at people that are like the chassis plant. They become like used to that smell.
Yeah.
And even petrochemical, like the jockeys that do the diesel and stuff, they don't smell it anymore. But we can clearly smell it because we're not exposed to it. Even at a chemical plant, the nitrates, you can smell that, but they don't smell it anymore.
And that's an even bigger risk than if there is a break in the seal, because they wouldn't even possibly be able to say, look, this isn't a full seal.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a visible break.
100%.
Okay. So my understanding is then your team will go, you analyze the risk, you analyze the requirements, but then other than just giving a product that is appropriately certified, you then also follow it up with making sure that the person, the right size is appropriate and the person is able to, they know how to actually put it on.
Yeah. And what we see a lot of the times as well is people are using the wrong masks in the wrong application. So we try and explain it as best as we have knowledge on, and we get rigorous training on it. So we try and relay the message in simple terms. So if they work with welding fumes, most of the time people would give them a cartridge with a pre-filter and a retainer. But you get the pancake filter that has the active carbon in that protects them just as well. And at the end of the day, saving some cost for the end user or the employer. And it's much more comfortable. It's lighter.
Okay. But again, that's stuff that you, through training, through on-site experience, you've picked up. And it's a bit maybe unfair to expect a safety officer who's generally never done the job.
Yeah.
Also, definitely not gone into the depths that you have from a training perspective to know these things are out there.
100%. Like we don't see it often unless they have a long line of experience with incidents that happen so they can learn the lesson. Because a lot of the time, some safety officers work in the environment and they never experience an incident on site because the stuff they have on site isn't as hazardous. Or if it's like someone going from a mining industry to a food and bev, but they're only going to a production plant or packaging plant.
Yeah.
The risks aren't the same. So the experience they have won't be the same.
But it doesn't mean the end result can't be just as tragic or dangerous for the
100%.
person using it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's clear on a respiratory, and I mean, I think it's a hugely required component. I mean, giving everybody the best confidence that this product works how it's supposed to work. You know that you're going home every day, and then also for the next 10, 15 years, you can carry on earning money for your family, which is, I think that's a critical thing in South Africa.
100%. So I don't think it's necessarily for the employees. I think it's more for the employer to ensure that the testing has been done and they can sleep at night knowing their people are safe while doing the functions they are paid to do.
I think that's a really cool point, because there is, for sure, the employer gets the value of I've done everything I can to make sure this person is appropriately protected. The other side of it, and my natural setting, is people don't show up to do it wrong. They don't get to the office and say, what can I stuff up today?
Yeah.
And with that, if somebody understands, if you go through, probably what you would see is, yes, this process covers the employer, but the employee going through the process, when they taste that bitter or the sweet taste, they're probably immediately starting to think, hold on, when I wear this, there's ammonia. What can that do to me? And the likelihood of wearing it properly and taking it seriously is probably a lot higher if they go through that process as well.
If they learn it themselves.
Yeah.
And they need to, a lot of the times, like a locker talk, they'll talk about different hazards. And they don't always relay the same message to the safety officers. And that's where the gap starts. Because most of the time, the safety people don't even know what the challenges are the people on the ground are facing. And we definitely are trying to eliminate it with the fit test.
Cool. I think to sum it up, I mean, I view general experiences in life that when you've got good knowledge, you can make a good decision. And I think through this exercise, you're giving the employer confidence that they get covered, but as well the employee knowledge of, even though it might feel like it's sealed or it might feel like it's completely working properly, if I can taste that taste, something's wrong.
Yes, and to make a noise if it is wrong.
Yeah.
Not try and do your own...
Mock a plan.
Mock a plan.
Cool. That covers respiratory. I mean, there's other elements, and I mean the other debilitating hazard that we find on sites on noise. Again, it's one of those that when you start losing your hearing, it doesn't impact you. The sounds in your environment don't impact you as much because your hearing's been damaged to that degree. But your hearing doesn't get better. How do we, I mean, give us some practical information about what does that look like on site? What does hearing protection practically look like on site?
So most of the time you get sites that's really good at enforcing the wearing of earplugs, and people will do testing and training, but at the end of the day, the employees doesn't understand the implications. We tell them once that your hearing doesn't come back, but if you don't enforce it constantly, it's something that they surpass. So what we see a lot on site, especially in food and bev, someone will wear a mop cap with the plugs in, and they'll just wear it. So the safety officer comes past and he doesn't address it because it looks like that person's wearing the earplug.
What do you mean he'll just wear it?
So it literally, they don't fit it properly.
So they don't insert it?
Yes, they don't insert it into their canals properly to cut out the noise of the environment. So it's something we see regularly on
and
site.
that then looks like they're wearing the appropriate safety,
yes,
but it's not serving its purpose.
No, and most of the people won't address it.
Okay. How can you? What are the ways of addressing it?
So to make it more strict, some of the sites have implemented the ear-muff solutions because you can see if it's skew and if it doesn't have a proper fit. So that's the pro of an earmuff. But an earmuff also takes a lot more noise out of the environment.
Okay.
So there is pros and cons to both an earplug and an earmuff. But I think it's through education and constant education.
What can that look like? Give us a practical idea of what that looks like.
So they normally do it annually, and then there would be toolbox talks on site that they do. In addition to the training we give in person to someone, and in passing saying, Dylan, your earplug isn't fitted. Do you want to lose your hearing? We also have a system called the in-ear fit testing. That's where they actually test the protection the individual gets from the earplug. So I know the packet says 28 decibels, but we can't prove it, and companies also can't prove it.
So let's try and understand that a bit better. So you're saying the packaging says 28 decibels, that's the earplug protection, right?
Yeah.
What is the requirement to reach that 28 decibels of protection?
You need to fit it properly.
And how are we making certain about that? I mean, that's obviously the biggest, like you mentioned earlier, having a earplug half inserted will give you almost no protection.
Nothing, yeah.
So what is this fit protection that you're talking about?
When we do the testing, we go to site, we test the person's hearing level without any protection. Then we insert the earplug they are going to be using on site and test it again. Normally, they don't hit the safe range, and then we show them in person how to better fit that earplug to get the most out of that earplug. And this device lets us do it. And it also gives the surety to the company to say that Rene has been tested annually, here's the documents, and if I ever come with a claim, they can use that to say, but we tested we trained her, and we did a check that the plug gives her the right protection. Sorry.
Okay, so when you're talking about you give a certificate or a confirmation, explain that a little bit for me to make sense. What's that certificate for?
So the challenge that employees and employers have is if they put in a claim that they lost their hearing, there's no way to prove that it was the company's fault by inferior product or a lack of training that made them lose their hearing. So this certificate that it prints or gives you is a good way for the employee and the employer to be on the same page, to say we did give you testing, you got the right equipment, and you didn't lose your hearing at work.
Okay, so we've taken all the necessary steps to ensure we've kept you safe. Potentially, what have you been doing outside of a work environment that might have damaged your hearing?
Yes. So going to the club.
Yeah, because I mean, that's far higher than the regular
Right.
course, 85 decibel, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you seen people through education that you and your team have provided actually increase safety and increase, maybe even linked to safety, productivity? Because ultimately we're there to do a job. Yes, we need to be safe, because if we're safe, we don't lose time, we don't have injuries, we don't have that element. But also probably if we do it properly and we don't have to have that risk, we might even be a bit more effective and productive.
All the time. So as soon as the team helps a company get over an obstacle, and to use it as simple as possible, I'm going to use the garments. If you change from a dipped garment to an inherited garment, the lifespan on that garment is already much longer. So one of our clients uses their garment for 5 years and they don't replace it. They got 2 sets and they've been using that for 5 years. So that's the quality we can give a surety to the customer on, but it doesn't wash out. So normally fabrics are dipped and it washes out, but with the inherited technology, you get a much longer lifespan. It's less thicker, it's comfortable.
Cool. So let's talk to that, because that's exactly what I'm trying to understand. And when it comes to the garment, explain the difference between a dipped garment and a inherently protected garment in terms of comfort.
So if you're talking, I think you need to start with the beginning part. So dipped garments are normally a natural fiber, like cotton, that is dipped into the properties that you want. So if it's acid resistant or flame retardant, they would dip it into 2 chemicals that gives that cotton the property. But if you look at technology like inherited fabrics, that is a modified yarn that protects the user against the same properties. It's also much lighter. Cotton shrinks. Inherited fabric doesn't shrink. It doesn't lose color. It's much lighter in grams as well.
So exactly to that. So if you've dipped something, all I imagine is I'm taking a piece of cloth and I'm putting it in. It holds on to something. That whatever is holding onto the fabric is likely to make it thicker, maybe more warm, not as comfortable. Is that a thing?
Yes, it is definitely a thing. So the fabric is actually dipped before it gets assembled. That's how I understand it.
Okay.
But that adds an extra grammage on it. And it's not as breathable, because you can think if something is dipped, it closes the breathability of the fabric. Yes. Yeah. But on an inherited garment, it's just woven. And the property is in the yarn.
Okay, so now I'm understanding that with this dip versus inherit, the one might be more comfortable. Does that impact the person using it?
100%, because if you work on a site for 8 hours and you're working on a pillar you need to go weld somewhere, maybe on a elevated platform, and you're exposed to heat and sun, you want something that's much lighter. You have more movement as well.
Cool. And that's then your example of get onto site and understand the real challenge.
Yes.
Instead of just saying, okay, well, you need a Conti suit, here you go. This can protect you from flame and acid.
Yeah.
Understand the full picture.
Yes.
Based on what you've experienced and seen on sites, are there any misconceptions that you constantly come across that people that are responsible for either speccing or procuring or even using safety that you constantly see happening on sites?
So I would say what we see a lot is people just assume an industry name like D59 or Sasol D59 is the normal standard. You don't need a Sasol D59 for every single application that you get on site. There's different things for different applications, and we see a lot of the time someone uses the product for the wrong application and at the end paying more for that product.
Explain that to me. How do they pay more?
Pay more.
Yeah.
So if it's just a gardener doing garden work, they won't need an acid flame garment. But now that's like the industry norm because it feels thick, it feels like it's working, but it's not made for that application. So you're paying much more for that garment and you literally just need a UV protected polycotton garment.
And the probability is, again, productivity will be decreased because it's an uncomfortable...
Yes, he will take it off and be exposed, which is the problem most of the time.
Cool. And away from Conti suits, do you and your team experience any other misconceptions on site?
So the main misconception we see on site is also linked to spectacles. We have scenarios where people are asking for different types of lenses and it doesn't even fit the application. So for example, amber, we don't see amber a lot anymore in the market, but people think it opens your pupils and then lets more light in so you can better see the objects that you're working with. But there's new technology in the market that allows for that as well. For example, the UVEX coatings, they have different coatings for different applications. You get coatings that increase the light exposure from the items you're working with, and then they are guaranteed as permanent coatings. It doesn't wash off when you wash or scratch your spectacles. It's also embedded in the lenses.
And in this case, would that then take away the requirement of an amber lens being provided?
Yes.
Where it's still a clear looking lens, but it has that technology inside.
Yes.
Cool. Rene, thank you so much for your time. I think this has been hugely informative. And I think what you and your team are doing is quite phenomenal in terms of increasing knowledge, increasing the education discussion, and not just being there to offer a product and make a sale and leave.
100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope this episode added value to you. If you are experiencing any safety challenges on your sites and require any additional information, please do leave us a message on LinkedIn via Protekta Safety Gear's page, or alternatively follow the link below and share a message with us because maybe it can create value or valuable conversation for future episodes. Be sure to also follow us on LinkedIn. There will be some valuable information shared from today's discussion.